A big thanks to my listeners for staying tuned in to the Joan Jerkovich Show here on 910 KINA. We're continuing with our second guest. This is Carol Lee Jones, Executive Director with CAPS, which is the Child Advocacy and Parenting Services Agency here in Salina. Welcome, Carol Lee.
Hey, Joan. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, and I always have to tell people to go on video because we were having a little discussion about, what's happening in society. And I'm just going to let you launch from that because you have a lot of information and a lot to say.
Well, we receive weekly updates from the National Children's Alliance, who is the licensing body for child advocacy centers in the United States. And we run a child advocacy center where children who are sexually abused or serious physical abuse are interviewed there in a multidisciplinary approach. It's the most child-friendly way to elicit the terrible information that kids have if they've been sexually abused or physically abused. But it's done in such a child-friendly manner, in an off-site setting. But you have all the major players there. They're just sitting in another room watching it via closed-circuit television. So I'm digressing here, but what I saw was there was a video that came down. PBS ran it on some of their channels. But the BBC had done the investigation, and it was talking about the scourge of child deaths from child abuse. And of all the children that are killed in the world, half of them are American children killed by their parents in the United States.
Yeah, it's so
and
ridiculous.
That's just sickening,
Mm-hmm.
terribly sickening. I mean, we have 10 times the number that Canada has. For every 25 kids killed in the United States, maybe one is killed in Great Britain. It is just, I would like to bring your listeners attention to that fact and to go online to look at, 22-minute segment on child abuse and child deaths in America due to abuse.
Well, and you know that you're here, Carol Lee, because, Salina has been outraged. And I know SalinaPost.com, the website with Eagle Radio here, just was on fire with rage of people with the 14-month-old that was killed by the boyfriend with the mother, they believe. Complicit because, she also is arrested as well now.
Well, and the abuse occurred over an 8-day period. And the child was kept from other people, so it wouldn't be probably found out that there were bruises all over that child. Yeah, it was a heinous act, and again, you've got people that maybe don't have the skills to be parents that are parenting, and it just breaks our heart because there are so many great services in Salina that are free of charge, that we can provide the support behind those young families that are parenting their kids who may not have been parented as well as they needed to be when they were young. Exposing your children to your boyfriend that you've known for a month or two, that is the most dangerous thing you can do for your child.
Are there statistics supporting that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
As far as what we see as far as child sexual abuse and physical abuse, so much of it is the mother's boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
You just have to limit who has contact with your child, and if they're not related to them, and if they haven't had child development studies or successfully raised a child, I would never leave my children alone with someone unless they had been a parent before and successfully raised a child. And the statistics bear that out.
Are there resources for them to have monies to pay for child care?
Well, an issue, though, is not just child care. The issue is that, a young parent of that age could be in the Heartland programs with their early Head Start. So they would be getting support weekly. Yes, there are free child care slots to the most needy families within that. We don't know the specific family, but I'm just telling you there are resources out there in our community that could have been utilized, that we could have mitigated some of that, situation with the child being left with the boyfriend. Again, it was poor choices on the mom's part, but if we could have gotten in there early with the mom and her the biological father for the child, we could have maybe had a different outcome had they had all the resources that Salina has to wrap around families like that.
Absolutely. And yet you talk about some of the societal issues that we see, and this being an issue certainly in the United States with the statistics you told us at first relative to other countries. But with that, we talk about the boyfriend that maybe you haven't known that long. Maybe
Who
you didn't
has
get
a-
your own good
Who was
parenting.
in prison.
What other, yeah, what other social issues do you see wrapped around these families that get in trouble like this?
Well, it is so important if you're going to be sexually active at a young age, you've got to have birth control, because the issue is you yourself are not an adult yet. So you're still needing so many things yourself. And when you are a needy person yourself, haven't had your own needs met, or you're not mature enough to set aside your own needs for your child, you're going to have a difficult time parenting.
Do you see that? Do you see some of the cases that are sent to your agency with very young parents? A majority?
Yes. You know, it really, you know, when they say it takes a village, but it does take a multi-generational approach. If there's a teen pregnancy, there can be some really successful outcomes. But those are the teens who are wrapped with their, the grandparents are readily involved in the raising of the child, both sets. Those situations can work out. But I'm just saying that what this PBS and actually the BBC did the investigation when they ran it on PBS, and what they were pointing out is all the different support systems that the other major countries have for children that we don't have here. Like, they have universal health care. Granted, you're taxed to death in those systems, but this doesn't happen to kids in like Scandinavian countries and European countries, because there's child care is available for all, health care. And
what about teen pregnancies in those countries? Is there a different statistics on that?
Oh, yes, there is, because it's not, where we have situations where they won't even allow us to talk about birth control or sexual activity with middle schoolers. But I got to tell you, from what we know with the classes that we've taught with empowering girls, etc., that it starts at a very young age. And
well, you're starting to sound like a liberal here at Fox News, which is always fun for me, because I do bring in a lot of liberal guests.
But I'm just saying, this isn't a liberal issue.
Factual,
this
right.
is factual.
Exactly.
I'm saying parents who are really engaged with their children, who've talked from an early age what their expectations are for their children as far as their sexual health, for their physical being, to not be involved in those type of situations before they're in a monogamous relationship, and out of high school. Those are the type of things that we pressed with our children, and I also just kept them so busy that they didn't have an opportunity to think about it, because they were tired.
Right.
Well, they probably thought about it, but I'm just saying.
I want to throw a comment out here, and I want to jump in with this, because, again, when the website just blew up on us, I want to mention what Michael, one of the commenters, wrote. And I like that this was from a gentleman. Let's assume he was using a correct gender when he put in his comment. But he said, "Love is blind," and in her case, meaning the woman of the 14-month-old, she could not see the writing on the wall right in front of her, warning her to get out before it was too late. Sadly, many women are in this situation, feel trapped by the men that control them. They just keep getting by day to day until one day it all hits the fan. Women out there who find themselves in a similar situation need to wake up, grab the kid, and run now. Get out of your abusive relationship.
That is a marvelous comment, and it's true. Perpetrators or people that are angry and want to abuse women or whatever, they seek people with victim mentalities. And so he might have sought her out because he knew that he could control her. Mm-hmm. And then she just didn't have the experience nor I don't know this poor 19-year-old, and the situation that, is horrible enough that her child was beaten to death, and it's very horrible that she knew what was going on and wasn't able to protect her child. But the issue is, we've got a whole bunch of individuals out there having children who weren't really parented themselves in an appropriate manner.
And that's a big issue, because you brought that up a couple times now. So talk about what you're seeing or not seeing in the parenting situation for these potential abusers or future abusers.
Well, the BBC's identified not only the social constraints that the United States has in relation to some of these other socialized governments or countries in Europe where children fare so much better. And I'm not asking for I'm not a socialist, and I'm not asking for that kind of society.
You don't want all the hate mail.
Right, but the issue is we have got to do something about teenage pregnancy. And, I love the idea, what they were talking about in England is if there were red flags raised when that child was born in the hospital, then they were visited every week until that child was 4 years old by a health nurse. And that kept a lot of those terrible societal problems away too, because the family was getting supported every week by a nurse who would be reporting if there's something bad going. But not only were they supported by that emotionally when she came in to visit, they were learning exactly what they needed to do. And that's the problem. So many people are having children and they don't know what to do. So they react to what they know. And if you knew growing up hitting, screaming, to make kids behave, then that's probably what you are going to do as a parent. And so what we've got to do is not let another generation go by. We have got to catch those families at risk and throw as many community resources around them as possible.
Well,
and that's not a socialist issue. That is in protecting our society, because those we breed predators by having children being raised without being bonded, without receiving the nurturing and affection and love that they need in those first 2 years. If they're neglected, abused themselves, that's what most likely they are going to do to their own children.
Well, let me read another comment off the website that really got to me. It was written in by Anonymous, and it says, "Don't judge this young mother until you know the facts. Looking in, I have been in her shoes. I went to work, my boyfriend called me and told me my son had thrown a fit and hit his head. When I got home, the side of his face was bruised. I questioned him over and over, and even his family, to see if this was something that he was capable of doing, as he had 3 little girls, and they said no. But months later, he finally confessed to me that he had backhanded my child because he wanted a piece of gum." And here's something that we're going to have to take a little bit of a break. I'll let you comment briefly. But she said, "I should have turned him in, and looking back, I wish I would have."
Mm-hmm.
How's that strike you?
Well, that
Got
was
about
abuse,
a
and
couple minutes.
I wish you could have reported that. Again...
So we would encourage her to have reported that, but
Oh, absolutely.
on some sense that we can understand, the way this was written, I assume she got away.
Right.
I hope.
What issue I'm thinking too, though, is just what I said originally. Some people are ill-equipped to be caring for young children. And, he had 3 children himself, but, I don't know the circumstances for that. And,
Again, another boyfriend situation.
Exactly. And the more
left my kid with my boyfriend.
And he's virtually a stranger to that child, because he's not that boyfriend was not having the relationship with the child. He was having the relationship with the mother. And so I just want the listening audience out there to know that please don't leave your children with people that aren't well equipped to handle the stresses of parenting young children, because it's difficult.
Good to take a break on. Let's take a little break. This is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show, and be sure to catch the video outtakes, podcasts, and links to iTunes and my blogs on Joan Jerkovich.